Okay, that sounds terrible. Should you have a stereo widener on your Mixbus? Personally, I don't think so, but let's find out. Hello and thanks for watching. If you enjoy learning about mixing and recording, click subscribe and let's get into it. So, stereo wideners. Stereo wideners have been a bit of a buzzword for many, many years now, and they seem to be something that is really hard for beginner mixers to resist. I think it has something to do with just being able to understand what it does by reading the name. Unlike, compression when you're getting started, you don't really understand how that would make sense from what it does. But with widening, it's just like, oh, it's just gonna make things wider. Why wouldn't I like that? Well, that's what I hope we're going to prove today. It's a question we get on the Self-Recording Band podcast like all the time, so I'm really happy we're going to be covering it today. And by the way, if you want to learn more stuff, do check out the Self-Recording Band podcast, and we have a free one-on-one coaching call link down below. Check it out. Okay, so the truth is that I don't use stereo wideners on my Mixbus really at all, at least not for widening. And to be honest, I don't know many pro mixers who do. And as I'll show you at the end of this video, when I do use a stereo widener, it's usually to actually make things more narrow. But don't take my word on it. The first thing we're going to do is take a track and apply some stereo widening onto it and see how it stacks up against the original mix. Okay, so I've got a track loaded up here. We're just going to open up Ozone 9 Imager as our widening plugin of choice for today. This is a very powerful widener in that you can have multiple different frequencies and make them wider or narrow individually, which is nice rather than just an all-in-one. But I think to start, we are going to just go with a global widening plugin that is affecting all the frequencies across the whole mix, because that is honestly what I've seen being done, and that's what I'm trying to help educate not to do. So we want to see what does that actually do and what does it turn out to be. And then after that, we will look at doing a more frequency specific widening process and how that compares as well. Okay, so it's really simple. We're just going to click play, and then I'm going to play with the width knob right here as we go. And if I drag it down, that's actually going to make it more mono and less wide. And if I push it up, it's going to go more wide. I'll do that as it plays so you can kind of hear the difference. So that's very mono, entirely mono. This is back to default, the mix. And that's width. Just gonna leave it here. Back to default. And width. Okay, so here is actually why the mistake happens. As I make it more wide, it also seems to get louder. And loudness is always mistakenly perceived as better. What we have to do to really check this is volume match our two versions. So I'm going to crank it to like as wide as we can make it. And then I'm going to bring down the volume on that wet version so that we can bypass the plugin and hear it against our non-widened version, like the actual mix, and the widened version at approximately the same volume. I've got it cranked up here to wide, and as we're playing, I'm going to just drag down this volume here and we'll try and figure out a kind of similar spot.
I'm going out, I'm rolling out lead. My fangs are tight, got blood on my brain. I got blood on my brain. I got vamp. I'm going out, I'm rolling out lead.
So that seems to be about volume matched. I'm just going to drop it kind of where the vocals are, because I think that's really important to kind of be hearing. If you were doing this on your Mixbus, you would be affecting everything. So having kind of everything represented is really important. So that's off. It sounds really cohesive. Back in. Okay, that sounds terrible. I'm going to just turn it up a little bit more because I think I made it a little too quiet. So I'm just nudging it up barely, and we'll do a comparison one more time. Off. I'm going out, I'm rolling out lead. Now I want to hear the same section with it on. I'm going out, I'm rolling out lead. The vocal sounds so weird. It's like just all focus is gone. That's obviously a loss. Can't use that. But let's jump to a section where the guitars are heavy. Okay, now the widening back on with the guitars and the, the big loud section of the song. The guitars have kind of lost all their punch to me. It's not good to me. I'm going to toggle it in and out as we play without me kind of interrupting it so you can really hear the difference. Obviously, it's making a big difference, but it's a terrible difference if you ask me. So, result of this first experiment of just applying widening to the whole mix, big thumbs down. Don't do it. Now, the argument could be made that maybe it's just that I've gone too far. So let's play around with that a little bit. So here's something interesting. It could be argued, I think, that the guitars do sound a little cooler with this kind of smaller amount of width going on. But what I want you to listen to this time when I A/B it is the kick drum in particular. The kick and snare, I think, really lose their focus, and they are the driving boom, ta, of this song. If we lose that, we've done really bad damage to the mix, in my opinion. So have a listen to that, because I think maybe on your first instinct, you were like, oh yeah, that sounds cool, but I don't think it does. Yeah, bypassed way better to me again. So once again, in experiment 2, the Mixbus having a stereo Widener plugin on it doing just a little bit this time is a failure. No good. So for our third experiment, I want to try using the multiband widening to see if we can specifically widen certain sections of the frequencies to make that work and sound more impressive. If there's something that's going to work, I think this would be it. Okay, so I've loaded up Ozone Imager again, but this time I've broken it into 4 different frequency bands: our low ends, our low mids, our higher mids, and our, presence treble area. Definitely not exact, but kind of roughly just worked it into something that I think is going to work. And I'm just going to play with each of those bands width independently as I listen to the song here. And then we'll just do a little comparison, again, volume matching, to make sure we actually are making an improvement, because it's really easy to think we are using Wideners. Okay, here we go. So that's our low end. I don't think we're improving anything with that. Our kind of lower mids. That's just messing with our snare and kick too much. Higher mids. That's kind of nice. It's making our guitar and vocals a little more exciting. And our higher mids. Okay. So interestingly, I've ended up with this kind of ramp where I was leaving our kind of lower frequencies alone, which I think does make sense, and then manipulating our higher mids and presence and treble for more excitement in the top end. So let's now do the A/B test to see if we actually like what we've done. Unbypassed. I'm going out, I'm rolling out lead. My fangs are tight, got blood on my brain. Bypassed again. I got blood on my back. I got vampire brain. Okay, so I think we've done something cool, but at too much of a cost. Again, I think the kick and the snare have been impacted in a way that's just not acceptable to me. It's not worth whatever we've gained by this little kind of excitement in the top end. You definitely can get away with getting something done with this multiband technique, but I think ultimately you'd have much better results if you were going back in the mixing process and doing it to the individual tracks. I could try doing this to the top end of the guitars specifically, maybe that really high band on the vocals just a little bit, but not on the whole mix, because it's just messing with too much stuff. That's my opinion, at least. But this third example is kind of like, okay, maybe this could work, whereas the first 2 examples of just global treatment was a hard no. Don't put a stereo widener on your Mixbus unless you're being very specific, and you have to. If you can go back to the earlier tracks and do it in mixing, do that. There's really no reason to be doing it on the Mixbus, in my opinion. Now, as a bonus, I do want to show you the one thing I use this plugin on my Mixbus for pretty often, actually. And I know that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but what I actually use the stereo widening plugin for is narrowing things. So what I like to do on the right type of mix is take our low end and make it more mono. I find that this kind of results in a more punchy and cohesive low end across the mix and makes it easier with loudness and limiting as well. What I would do in that case is find a low end frequency area. Say we're just happy with this. I would then just drag down our width. to fully mono, and I can engage and unengage this band so you can hear that difference. So it's kind of taking like the bass, the low end of the guitars, and our kick drum and just shoving it really, really mono. In this case, this song doesn't really need it. It's already got a really kind of cohesive, tight low end, but I'll just show you what that's like. You'll have to listen really closely though. Here's Bypass to start.
I'm going out, I'm rolling out.
And here's back with the mono low end.
I'm going out.
It's not right for every mix, but that is definitely my #1 use of a stereo widener. I don't reach to this to make things wide. First, reach for your panning and your EQ. You'll have more luck with that. It's about arrangement more so than any magic that you can use with a plugin. So at the end of this experiment, I feel pretty confident saying that you should not have a stereo widener on your Mixbus. There are, of course, always exceptions, but in general, I highly suggest going to the source track and trying to achieve width on a track-by-track basis rather than on the Mixbus. And if possible, don't actually use a widener at all. Panning and EQ can be much more effective. At the end of the day, stereo widening is actually only providing the illusion of more width. We can't go wider than our 2 speakers will allow. Unfortunately, there's always a compromise to this. So a simple rule of thumb that you can use is widen micro, not macro. Use frequency-specific widening when possible, and only on the specific track that you want to manipulate. Don't plop it on the entire mix. Micro, not macro. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do click subscribe below and help me grow this channel. It is so appreciated. Also, do check out the Self-Recording Band podcast, and we have that free one-on-one coaching call at the link below as well for you. And now, if you want to see how I use distortion to mix drums in my Desert Island plugin video, check out this.